on camera, proof that he's preaching blasphemy and subversion to the simple pilgrims who come to listen to him. They call him the knife man. Is Judas Iscariot the true militant face of the Jesus movement? Religious hardliners demand the chief priest crushes the troublemakers.
And from the seaside palace of Pilate, Rome's man in Palestine hears the news he's been dreading: trouble in Jerusalem.
Good evening. The crisis in Jerusalem deepened tonight. Evidence captured on official security cameras appears to prove that the popular rabbi from Nazareth has committed blasphemy. Other reports lay him open to charges of treason for claiming to be a king. If these charges turn out to be true, both the chief priest and Governor Pilate will be forced to act. Our first report is from our special correspondent, David Jessel.
In Jerusalem's internet cafe, there's only one website they're after: JesusNazareth.org. The Jesus movement has been making news all week. But the very publicity the organization is attracting may also have signed the death warrant of the Jesus movement. That's because his followers aren't the only ones who've been tracking the rabbi. Jerusalem's ever-present security cameras have been trained on the man ever since his arrival last Sunday. And according to the authorities, captured on camera are some sensational, provocative, and possibly blasphemous pronouncements. They seem to confirm our report yesterday that the rebel rabbi had prophesied the destruction of the temple and that, more controversially still, he would miraculously rebuild it. It's not altogether clear what exactly the dissident leader was in fact saying, and it's by no means clear that he is actually advocating its destruction. At a time when Jerusalem is bursting at the seams with pilgrims, the city's population increases tenfold at Passover, any remark can spark trouble at this tense and tinder-dry time. These remarks from the Nazareth rabbi, on top of yesterday's tax challenge to Rome, seem nothing less than inflammatory.
This talk of destroying the temple is something which is just simply intolerable. This is something which strikes at the heart, the foundation of Judaism. This building has stood there for 1,000 years, and now they're talking about destroying it. I wish he would go back to the Galilee immediately.
Well, apart from the religious offense the rabbi has given with his remarks, there's growing concern about his political ambitions. One of his followers is said to have addressed him as Messiah, or God's appointed king, a title the rabbi did not deny. Over live now to David at the Internet Cafe in Jerusalem. David, how are the people who are gathering down there reacting to the news they're getting over the Internet?
Well, as you can imagine, with Jerusalem flooded with pilgrims, it's also awash with rumour and speculation. Not everyone is shocked, I have to say. The rabbi is popular, he's been drawing huge crowds, and of course these people live in the daily expectation that a Messiah, a deliverer, will one day come. So for many, it's a message they actually want to hear.
But clearly a provocative claim.
Well, is it a claim or isn't it? What sort of a claim is it? Is he saying, yes, I'm going to be king? Quite honestly, it doesn't look like monarch material to me. Or is he just talking about some abstract new kingdom of peace and forgiveness, something the powers that be, quite honestly, can afford to live with? It's the sort of thing that preachers always come out with. We simply don't know.
David, thanks very much indeed. And we will have more on the implications of those remarks later in the programme. Now, if the rabbi is actually claiming to be a Messiah, and as David says, it's still not at all certain that he is, what exactly does the title mean? The Jews in occupied Palestine look for someone to set them free. They want a man with military skill, capable of overthrowing Roman rule. But they're also expecting someone both righteous and holy, who will lead them to spiritual salvation. The closest model is David, the shepherd turned warrior king, and many say the Messiah will be of the house of David. With me to discuss what the Jews want and how far Jesus fits the bill is Rabbi Tony Bayfield. Tony, quite a job description.
Quite a job description, but I don't think we should get too hung up on that. There are loads of ideas around about who the Messiah is or what is required of the Messiah. Descendant of the house of David, prophet, and so on. Key as far as Jews are concerned is, will he deliver? Will he rid Judea of oppressive Roman rule, and will he usher in peace and justice for all of humanity?
But he doesn't seem to have much time for politics. He doesn't seem to be making an open bid for the Jewish leadership.
As you've said, it's not clear who he sees himself as. But then one has to say, leadership, well, it depends what you mean by leadership, and it depends what you mean by politics. But as I say, the proof of the pudding will be in the eating as far as the Jewish people are concerned.
Tony, thanks very much. The Roman governor of Judea, Pontius Pilate, has brought forward the timetable of his regular Passover visit to Jerusalem, and we understand he's already left his seaside palace at Caesarea. This year he'll be facing a special threat with the Galilean rabbi's provocative claim to kingship. Here's Linda Bryans on the headache Pilate faces and the comfort he leaves behind.
It's not hard to see why Pilate prefers to live almost as far away from Jerusalem as possible in this province, by the seaside of Caesarea. Life in Caesarea is good. Pilate has his own private amphitheatre here, where plays are regularly staged. Caesarea, for Pilate, is a home from Rome. The fact is, the less Pilate sees of the empire's subjects, the happier he is. He has quite a reputation for rubbing up the Jewish population the wrong way. Take the issue of the currency. When he arrived, he had it stamped with pagan symbols of the empire, which meant that every day the Jews had to handle what they regarded as blasphemous money. There were violent demonstrations in Jerusalem, during which Pilate had his own soldiers infiltrate the crowd to break it up. Another calculated snub to the Jews' most sacred city was when he had his soldiers quartered in Jerusalem during the winter. One evening after sunset, the troops erected their standards outside the temple itself. In an extraordinary display of civil disobedience, the Jews marched all the way here, the full 60 miles to Caesarea. Pilate threatened to have them all executed, and thousands of Jews stretched out their necks to invite the executioner's sword. Pilate backed down. But with more trouble brewing in Jerusalem now, Pilate is in no mood for compromise. This is Linda Bryans at Pilate's headquarters in Caesarea.
You're watching Dateline Jerusalem on a day when accusations of treason and sacrilege are leveled at the Nazareth rabbi Jesus. Coming up later in the program, fanatic or traitor? The shadow of suspicion falls on one of the dissident group's key lieutenants. And Jews beg the chief priest, act to stop Jesus now, to avoid Roman reprisals. First, that alleged split in the Jesus movement. The organization's treasurer, Judas, is said to be considering his position after a major policy split. He's also been accused of betraying the movement. Here's Richard Lindley.
Rumours have been spreading all week in this city of gossip about Judas' real place in the movement. Does his militancy truly reflect the rabbi's radicalism, or is Judas an isolated hardliner? Some investigative reporters say that his family name, Iscariot, is derived from Sicarus, Latin for the dagger traditionally carried by members of the extremist religious group, the Sicari sect.
The Sicari are probably the most radical of the groups which are running around the country today. They get their name from a dagger which they had hidden in their clothes. And they have been around for quite a while, unfortunately, sort of guns for hire, Jewish assassins.
But there could be an altogether different and totally innocent explanation. All the group come from the Galilee region, all except Iscariot, whose name could mean that he comes from Kiriath in the southern tip of the country near Hebron. In yet another confusing twist, there's talk that Judas Iscariot, far from being a committed and militant member of the Jesus movement, is now actively collaborating with the Jewish authorities. As to his motives, some say he was shocked by the rabbi's prophecies about the destruction of the temple. Others, that money is at the root of his apparent betrayal. There's talk of a bribe worth 30 pieces of silver. This is Richard Lindley in Jerusalem.
Well, back now to the immediate crisis. The man responsible for keeping the peace in Jerusalem is the chief priest, Caiaphas. And joining me is his spokesman, Michael Cole. How will Caiaphas act?
Caiaphas will act as he's always acted, in the best interests of all his people.
Yes, but the people seem to be getting quite agitated, quite excited by Jesus.
You know, Martin, excitement is the last thing we want at Passover. Passover is a sacred festival. It's an historic festival, and it's a family time. Let us keep politics way out of Passover.
Yes, but that's not so easy. He must be coming under all kinds of pressures at the moment.
Well, pressures that Caiaphas will cope with. He has the command of hundreds of temple guards. He has the full backing of the Supreme Council, the Sanhedrin, and he has.
But there's got to be every reason why he would.
Before you interrupt me, I know out there are hotheads who accuse him of being a collaborator with Rome, but you must remember that under Pilate, the Jews have in the main been allowed to practice their religion freely as long as they keep things under control and order is maintained. So the last thing we want is troops on the street, particularly at Passover.
Mr. Cole, thank you very much. And I believe that we can now go over to the Sanhedrin, the governing council, where a top-level meeting is about to begin. And we can see some of the members there arriving. Sleek limousines, a symbol perhaps of the very privilege and corruption that the Nazareth rabbi has been protesting about. And the heavy security reflecting the very real threat some of them may be feeling as a result of his provocative remarks at this sensitive time when the city is packed with pilgrims. And we can go over now to our man outside the Chief Priest's Palace, Richard Linley. Richard, what exactly will be on the council's agenda tonight?
Well, if you'd asked me that a few minutes ago, I'd have said two things. First of all, an examination of the prima facie case against Jesus, that appalling prophecy about the destruction of the temple, and his alleged claim to be the Messiah, and secondly, to fix his arrest and trial.
So what's changed in the last few minutes?
Well, what's changed is that Judas has been seen arriving at the building.
Judas? Are we talking here about Judas Iscariot, the member of the Nazareth sect who betrayed his leader?
That's indeed what we thought, but it seems now that Judas is being cast as the go-between. Caiaphas and the council don't want a big showdown with Jesus. He's too popular. So they're using Judas in a bit of shuttle diplomacy to mediate with Jesus and say, look, none of us wants to spoil the Passover. You've made your mark in Jerusalem. Now just go back to Galilee.
Thanks, Richard. Some hope then that Jerusalem's Passover crisis may pass off without incident. And just time for a look at tomorrow's headlines. The Jerusalem Post says, Jesus, Pilate to move, a reference to the prefect coming down from Caesarea. And in Haaretz we have the man who wants to put the knife in, a somewhat sensationalist profile of the supposedly dagger-wielding member of the Sicarii sect, Judas Iscariot. Till tomorrow from Dateline Jerusalem, good night.